Welcome to Dory Cote on Shamanism, a weekly podcast that explores one theme in shamanism throughout each month. Get comfortable, have a seat, and let's get started.
Welcome to podcast number 30. We're going to be talking this time about tools that you might use to identify your own shadow.
Dory, how can a client begin to discover their various shadow aspects?
I have taught many students and a few clients over the years about various tools that they might use that I have personally found helpful and that many others that I know of have found helpful to identify what are your own personal shadow aspects. There are many, of course, I'm naming just the ones that I'm familiar with, and there are many beyond this, but these are a good place to begin. There are a lot of books that are really helpful because they're challenging. They're challenging your thinking, and they're challenging your way of being. One that I recently read that I found quite useful was a book by a fellow by the name of Carl Greer, Greer. And the title of the book is Change Your Story, Change Your Life. Carl he's a Jungian psychologist and also a shamanic practitioner. And the book really is a pretty good guide to better understanding how we hold on to an old story. And he leads the reader through a series of exercises that gives you some insight or help you to claim your true self as your own storyteller, not the result of somebody else's story. And then, of course, some of the other tools that I have used many, many years in my life are working with the Enneagram. A lot of people are not familiar with the Enneagram, but the Enneagram, that's spelled Enneagram, as in Mary, is an ancient tool. Actually, nobody really quite knows exactly what its origin is, but it's a tool that helps you understand your own human development, your own spiritual growth, something that helps you with your own self-actualization. It's similar in a way to what many people are familiar with in the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator, but the Enneagram is far more in-depth and is a very, very powerful spiritual tool to help you understand who you truly are in the many, many dimensions of yourself, of your being. And it speaks specifically to the light aspect of your being self and the shadow aspect of your being self. And so it really helps to identify for each individual, going through a series of questions and answers. It's a pretty long test you have to take to identify what is your Enneagram personality type. But once you have done that, you have some tools that help you understand what are the shadow aspects of you specifically. And then you have someplace to begin with. The Myers-Briggs, of course, as I just mentioned, is another really powerful tool that helps you identify what are the strengths of your personality type and what are the weaknesses or the potential shadow aspects of your personality type. Another tool I love to refer people to is having an annual, if possible, astrological reading with somebody who you really know and trust. Because in that ancient technology of working with the stars and the position of the planets at the time of your birth, so much can be uprooted about the true nature of who you have come into this lifetime to be. And where are some of the stumbling blocks? Where are some of the pitfalls? Where are some of the places that you can best pay attention to your life's journey to help you to become, as I said last time, more fully human, more really fully filled out in your potentiality. So that's and seek out somebody who really is good, because a lot of people who take a weekend workshop in astrology and they think they're an astrologer, really a good astrologer has studied for probably 10 years or more. Just like a good shamanic practitioner, you want somebody who has studied a whole lot and is really immersed in astrology and pursues it from a spiritual perspective, not a scientific, technological kind of perspective. And then another way that I have found a lot of people have benefited from getting to know their shadow selves, or being able to even identify their shadow selves, is by doing a form of therapy called EMDR. E-M as in Mary, D as in David, R. And if you're not familiar with that form of therapy, it's one that really re-patterns your synapses so that old traumas don't have the kind of grip on you that they perhaps have had in certain parts of your life. Once those triggers are a little bit more identified and repatterned, then you have much greater possibility of being able to move forward with accepting and working with those pieces of your shadow without being overstimulated in the ways that you might be because of old traumas. And last but not least, I love, hanging out with people who push me, who challenge my thinking, who challenge my ideas, who perhaps have an opposite perspective on my own personal perspective, because that allows me to really go deep inside myself to constantly explore, well, what do I believe? What do I think? How do I feel? What are my values? If I just hang out with people who are exactly the same as me, I don't ever get to question that stuff, because it's like I've become like the oatmeal, just very bland. But if you're pushing yourself by allowing yourself to be in relationship with people who are not exactly like you, then you're much more likely to come in touch with what are those shadow aspects of yourself and be able to begin to work with them. There are a lot of other tools, but those are a few that are worthy of mentioning.
So EMDR, I just looked it up, stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing.
Yes, thank you.
And EMDR is often used with vets who come back with PTSD.
Yes.
It's been a very successful therapy for them.
Yes.
Is that use of EMDR getting to, is a veteran coming home with PTSD, is that a shadow self that they've picked up?
No, I don't believe that. I believe that by doing the EMDR, they're allowing their brain function to, restore some balance, and then they're able to actually see and have some, actually work with what is it that is triggering them, and what is the shadow part of what has triggered them. So let me just see if I can give you an example. For instance, let's say that, a vet comes back and he is having horrific nightmares, and in his nightmares he's getting up and punching holes in the wall because he's reliving some trauma from the war. So he does EMDR and he releases, he repatterns that part of his brain that is responding in that way to his dreams. So now that hopefully this pattern has been broken, he's not having these dreams, or if he's having the dreams, he's not getting up and punching holes in the wall anymore. There's the possibility for him to look at, what is it about me and my experience that I need to know about myself so that I can be more happy and fulfilled, not just eliminate the trigger. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like that now that the trigger has been set aside and the response is not there anymore, then this person has the opportunity to look at what's on the other side of this, that I might step into being more fully human, accepting that this response was a part of my life, and I don't need to be ashamed of it anymore. I don't need to own it. I don't need to apologize for it for the rest of my life, but it is a place that I went. So how do I work with that so that I now feel good about myself, more whole, rather than just saying, that was a part of my life and I don't ever want to think or talk about it again, like shooing it away.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're talking about tools to identify the shadow, and you gave us some very good specific tools. Can you say more about how to use these tools to find the hidden aspects of the shadow? Because it's almost as if we need a rear vision mirror to see what we can't see about ourselves.
Yes. What I would suggest for seeing, as that was a really great example of saying, a rear view mirror, because the shadow aspects of ourselves are often hidden. They're those parts of ourselves that we really don't want to even admit we have. And so again, using some of these tools brings those shadow pieces of ourselves into the forefront so that we really can look at them. If we're working with another person who is gentle and kind, like this astrologer that I was talking about, let's say you go for an astrological reading. If that astrologer doesn't bang you over the head but says, gee, I see in this chart that, in this lifetime you have this tendency to blame your siblings for whatever has happened in your life, and how are you going to work with that? How do you want to shift that so that you can own that tendency and not have it run your life? So, right there, you have somebody who has helped you sort of mine or dig out that hidden aspect of your shadow self. The same can happen by virtue of having relationships with people whose belief systems are not exactly like yours. They have a tendency to, open us up, sometimes even push our buttons in ways that make us stop and have to reflect on, whoa, what is happening for me here that I'm having this response? Another possible thing is to, what I've found is working within groups. Students obviously doing work in a shamanic context have to allow themselves to go to a very, very deep place, a very deep spiritual place, and mine a whole lot of sometimes hidden aspects of themselves. And so working with others, I would say, is probably the biggest tool one could use to look in the rearview mirror and see what are those hidden aspects of me that I am not seeing, but for which I would be helped if I was willing to look.
This completes our questions around tools to identify the shadow. Is there anything else you'd like to add specifically to this topic?
No, I feel complete about this at this moment. I look forward to talking more about the shadow in our next session.
Thank you for listening to Dory Cote on Shamanism. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, reactions, and questions. Come on over to dorycote.com and join the conversation. And tune in next week for more on this subject, or next month for a new subject. You can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes or sign up on dorycote.com to receive notices when the podcasts are posted. That's Dory, D-O-R-Y, and Cote, C-O-T-E.com. Drumming and rattling by Dory Cote and Terry Morgan. Technical assistance and audio production by JillHackett.com. And this is Susan Savelle, wishing you many blessings in your life. We hope to have you join us next time.